And we're live.
Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Johnson with Department of Management. Joining me today, I have Ted Nellison with Department of Management, and then also John Parker with Department of Management will be joining us. We are going to be talking about the process to certify local government budgets and kind of the steps that lead up to that, the role of the county auditor, all the different responsibilities and documentation and all that good stuff, and then sort of what the resulting products are after those budgets are certified. So we're going to go over certification. Again, Carrie Johnson, I do the county budgets, I do the ag extension, the assessor, and county hospital. Ted works with the city budgets and the township budgets, and then anything that's sort of a miscellaneous, sanitary sewer, DART, that sort of thing. John Parker does school budgets as well as community colleges and the 911 and EMA budgets. So when you have questions about one of those different types of budgets, that's just kind of a reminder of who you're going to want to visit with. And at the very end of our presentation, we do have a slide that lists kind of which budgets all of us do and our contact information, of course. We will make the slides available to Katie so she can get those posted and available to folks after the fact, as well as I know that this is being recorded. So if you have someone that was not able to attend that wanted to view the presentation, they can do that as well from ISAC's website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to go over the slides. We are going to be sort of going, I guess you could just say a little bit back and forth. I will do the beginning part, I'll trade off to Ted, and then we'll go down a little bit towards the end. John will run through a more detailed example of the certification process with a school. And I'm going to sort of go through the slides for all three of us, and we'll also all try to sort of monitor the questions in the chat as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see, files. Okay. Sorry, I'm having just a little bit of a problem sharing my screen here. Are you folks all seeing my screen now? The
Only
PowerPoint?
only part of it. You need to
Hmm.
make it full screen.
Let's see. Exactly. I'm going to stop share and try again. Hmm. Here we go. Right. Okay. Now is everyone seeing it full screen?
Looks good.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So again, we're talking about certifying the fiscal year 25 budgets. Just to kind of give you the overall general time frame for fiscal year 25 and moving forward, all budgets except for the EMA budgets are due April 30th. Some of your smaller folks' budgets, some of the ag extensions or assessors or townships, those are probably already coming in. They might not be taking advantage of that lengthier time frame. So if you want to jump in and get those certified, perfectly fine to do that. The role of the county auditor is to certify those budgets, and we'll kind of go over what that entails. What happens then after you certify them locally is DOM will review them, we will finalize them, and we will send out individual budget certifications. And we'll show you what that looks like. Once we send out those budget certifications, we do provide for a little bit of time frame for feedback from you folks or those levy authorities if they have questions. And then once everything is good to go, we certify the consolidated rates by tax district out to the county auditors. And we do that so you can compare by each tax district what the total rate is that we show to the total rate you have in your records, and kind of make sure everybody's in the same place as far as what those rates need to be. And then, of course, you would provide, as a county auditor, you'd provide that tax list to the county treasurer by June 30th, so then they can go ahead and prepare the tax statements. So we talked about that April 30th deadline. When we talk about somebody not being able to reach that deadline, the only entities that can request an extension or sort of a break when we talk about that April 30 is cities and counties. Cities and counties can request a budget extension from Department of Management in writing, and that per statute is for circumstances beyond the control of the city or county. I will tell you, folks have been sort of really pushing the bounds with that language. And the inclination is to not be so, I guess, accepting of some of the excuses that folks might have. So really, if you're going to request a budget extension, or you have, a city that you think is going to request a budget extension and you talk to them, it really needs to be for something beyond their control. Things like newspaper mess ups, something drastic happens as far as a major illness or something of that nature. Try not to really stretch the bounds of that language, because there's definitely pushback on the other side to not let people be so free with those extension requests. If an extension is granted, a letter with a new due date is sent to the city or county, and the county auditor also will get a copy. So that way, as the county auditor, if you have a city that's under extension, you have a document from DOM that says, okay, this is their new deadline, May 15th, whatever, and you can file that with their budget. So you know that this is when to expect their budget, and you have documentation of why they're late. No other levy authority has the option to request a budget extension. That doesn't mean folks won't be late. It just means that two things: they can't request an extension, but also they're not penalized. So there is no financial penalty to them certifying their budget after that April 30th deadline. Cities, counties, and townships that certify their budget late are held to the last year's certified taxes. So if an extension is not granted and the budget is late, then that particular city or county would be held to whatever the last budget year, so the current year, total tax asking. If there's a situation that's like that, if you as a county are penalized, or if you have a city that's penalized, DOM, so either Ted or I, would assist you with applying that penalty to the budget. So just, if we get there, you can work with us individually, and we'll figure out what needs to happen to that budget. So again, county auditor role: the county auditor certifies all the local government budgets, including the county budget. So county, you also certify your own budget. Ideally, whoever is preparing the budget is not the same person as who is certifying the budget. If you have multiple staff members in your department, so ideally you're having two different people do that. One person is primarily responsible for preparing it, and someone else, another staff member, would be the one that would certify it. And we'll go over how you actually physically certify it in the system. So when budgets start to come into your office, in the county auditor's office, you'll see a variety of different documents that get filed for all budgets. So all of the budgets are going to include certain things. So whether it's ag extension, assessor, township, whatever, you're going to see one proof of publication or an affidavit of posting for the small cities under 200 and under. So that will be one document that you receive. And this proof of publication is used to verify that publication requirements were met. Now, it can be a legible copy of what was published in the newspaper. And basically what the purpose of the affidavit from the newspaper is just that it's just them saying, hey, this is what was published. If you do happen to get, say, an emailed, scanned version of the proof of publication and it's just not legible, you can certainly request a new copy, or have your levy authority follow up the newspaper and say, this isn't legible. We can't really tell what was published. So please send me a clean copy, that sort of thing. So you're going to get that proof of publication for everybody, or affidavit of posting. You're going to get a signed copy of the adopted budget summary. It's a copy of the adopted budget summary and a signed copy of the adopted adoption of budget and certification of taxes. So this might be, depending on the budget, the same page, or it could be two different pages. You'll get the detailed budget forms in full. If we're talking about a city, county, school, anyone that does debt service, you would get the long-term debt schedule. You should get new scheduled or updated schedules if the payment amounts have changed. And then also, as it relates to debt, any pre-levy resolutions or surplus levy resolutions, if that would be applicable. So you're going to get, the signed copy of the adoption of budget. You're going to get all the budget forms themselves. Just one copy is fine. And that would include any long-term debt schedule or any debt documents. So everybody is going to file that, right? So they're going to give proof of publication, full signed budget. For everyone else, that's kind of full stop, other than cities, counties, and schools. So cities, counties, and schools, in addition to the regular documents, you'll also need to get a proof of publication or affidavit of posting for those little cities for this additional property tax levy notice per Senate File 718. So you'll get that additional proof of publication for that notice. Again, as a reminder, keep all these documents. At DOM, we don't need any paper documents. You don't need to scan things and send them to us. We can access the budget information that we need via our online system. If you do have questions or you want us to look at something that you've received, perfectly fine, follow up, send an email and send us something to look at, get that. But just in broad terms, you don't need to send us any paperwork. So when you're reviewing those documents, you're going to compare that proof of publication with the adopted budget. You want to make sure that those proof of publications, those notices, were published or posted within the required timeframes before the budget hearing, and that they were published in an official newspaper or posted, if that was the requirement. Whatever's adopted at the end of the day, those adopted property taxes can't exceed the published amount, and your adopted expenditures cannot exceed the published amount. So those are a couple of the things that you're going to be looking at. Proof of publication, did they meet the time frames as far as the window for publication, and is the notice actually what it needs to be? And then when they finally adopted, did they not exceed the taxes that they published or the expenditures that they initially published? And then, of course, additional checks are required for cities, schools, and counties due to House File 718. In general, if there's errors in publication, somebody didn't meet that not less than 10, no more than 20-day window for publication, etc., those should be highlighted and contact should be made with the levy authority so they know they need to make a correction, whether it's republishing or what have you. And Department of Management can assist with any corrections and communication that needs to happen. Be sure to always use the proof of publication for verification. And again, just to reiterate, Iowa Code always allows expenditures and property taxes to be less than published. So you can always go down in what you ask for as far as taxes or expenditure authority, but you can never go higher than what was published. And when you're looking at the budget forms, you're going to be looking at that property taxes levied column. So again, you'll want to verify that the signed adoption of budget and certification of taxes matches the same form on the online system. If there was some sort of shift or change, you want to make sure that you have the most recent version signed from that local levy authority. And again, as far as that publication time frame, levy authorities have the requirement to post or publish not less than 10 and no more than 20 days before the date of the hearing. The hearing date itself is not included. You start counting with the day that it's published or posted, and you count until the day before the hearing. So for example, when we think of that window, if we're talking about a budget hearing that is going to be held on February 22nd, the notice must be published February 2nd through February 12th in order to meet that window. At this point, then, I think we're going to go ahead and switch over to the House File 718 requirements, just in a little bit more detail and kind of reiterating some important points. And I'm going to turn it over to Ted.
And we do have one question at this point that we'll answer. So the question is, can we accept a copy of the affidavit sent electronically from the publisher? Yes, we understand a lot more of the publishers are going to an emailed affidavit, PDF affidavit attached to an email. That is absolutely okay for you to accept as long as it still meets the other requirements. They need to have the date it was posted in the or published in the paper. It's got to match what was online. So just make sure that it's got to have an actual affidavit statement in it. First and foremost, check to make sure they sent you the right city or county or school affidavit, because that's been a problem lately. But it's fine to take an electronic versus having to have one handed into you, especially if you can validate the source as being from the publisher. That's great. For House File 718 requirements, Carrie touched on them earlier. They've changed a little bit in that we're going to have another hearing that's going to take place, just kind of like cities and counties did for the last couple of years with max levy. We are now going to have that in place for cities, counties, and schools. Only difference in this really is max levy required you to get a resolution from your local government, from your city or county, along with their proof of publication for that hearing notice of max levy. Your proposed property tax hearing that took the place of max levy doesn't require a resolution anymore. The only thing that you will get is that proof of publication or affidavit of posting for cities 200 and less in population. That's the only piece you'll have to get for the proposed property tax hearing to validate. And then again, you just validate that the same way you would a budget adoption hearing notice by checking, did they publish or post within the not less than 10, not more than 20 days prior to the date of the hearing. And remember, the hearing date itself does not get counted as a date of notice. The notice dates start getting counted the day prior to the hearing and count backwards 10 and 20. We also have a tool online on the city's page, and I think it might be on the county's page of the DOM website at dom.iowa.gov. There's a publication calculator that you can download and use as a spreadsheet. We also have publication calculators built into the system itself that you can access to double check publication dates. So make sure that you're doing that. The same for this as you would for a budget adoption publication. So cities, counties, and schools, in addition to, this is very similar as well to max levy from previous years. In addition to publishing or posting, they have to also, just publishing or posting in the paper in their 3 locations throughout the city, they also have to publish the notice online. If they have a website, it has to be on their official website. If they have social media accounts, it needs to be on all of the various social media accounts. We will not require you to go and check that. You do not have to go proactively to all of your local entities and check to be sure that they're doing this. This would only come up if we have a citizen come up to us and say they didn't do this correctly. Then we'd start looking into it. On all of our certification documents that print out of our budget software, there is a statement attesting to the fact that they did this correctly where they sign their budget. So they are attesting when they hand this into you that they have done everything correctly. We're going to take them at their word until there is a problem for us to research. And in the past with max levy, because this was the same as max levy, same with max levy as it is with proposed property tax, we did have a couple of situations where a citizen would come forward and say they didn't do this properly. So that has happened in the past, and we'll continue to handle it the same way as we handled it in the past, as one-off events where you contact us, and then we'll kind of guide you as to what the next steps need to be done if somebody challenges that they didn't do those online postings correctly. But again, reiterating, you do not have to proactively go out and look for them. Okay. The your role in verifying regular budget documents is kind of the same as it's always been. We just added a couple of pieces. This year it actually got easier under max levy because you're really verifying two notices, right? You're verifying their proposed property tax notice to make sure that it was published, posted at the right time. You are verifying their budget adoption the same way that you always have in the past, where you're just checking their property taxes published against their property taxes adopted, their expenditures by program that were on the notice versus what was adopted, and making sure that they all match up. Okay, so we're making sure that they don't exceed. There is going to be the letter portion of this that comes in. There's going to be a letter that goes out. As you all know, we're about ready to send those letters to the taxpayer. We're not requiring you to do anything with the letters other than mail it out. We're going to look at the notices that are published for checking in the budget process. So make sure that you focus on those as you work through the budget process. The only thing we need to make sure of is, were they part of the letter that went out? You don't have to verify the date on it, but were they part of the letter that went out? If we have ones that were not part of the letter that went out, just kind of let us know that there will be that they weren't on that official letter. We're still working on what to do with those who do not meet that letter deadline. Hopefully we're just going to get everybody in. That's kind of the goal right now, is to just get everybody in. So if you have somebody who doesn't meet the deadline for the letters, we should know about it, but let us know anyway. Locally, so that we can track them, and then we will help you handle what to do with their budgets, what the disposition of their budgets will be when they come in. We also have, there's currently, for this I'll add in, for city specific, this is very city specific. I know some of you in your counties have city budgets where they had zero tax last year because they failed to get their budget done timely, so they got nothing. Under the bill, as under House File 718 requirements, as currently constructed, they would get zero again this year. In the system, I have allowed them to budget for 810 on their CGFL line, and hopefully that will move forward. We're trying to get a legislative change to make that law. If that doesn't come through, I will make any necessary adjustments to those zero rate cities that are needed. You just work them through based on what they give you and based on the rates that they have in the budget, and make sure everything is valid between the notices and the budget they've submitted to you. Once they get to me, I will handle any of those $0 cities that may have to be reverted back to zero if we don't get the necessary changes. So don't worry about those. We'll kind of move forward from there. Question online: would each department need to post on their social media pages, example, treasurer and recorder, or just so Harry, you can speak specifically to the counties. I will speak to cities. I have the guidance I've always given cities on this, going all the way back to the beginning of max levy, was if the social media feed is controlled by an employee of the city, be it police department, fire department, library, parks, whatever, then it needs, and they're using it in an official city capacity, then it needs to be posted on there, even if it doesn't make sense. Even if the entire rest of the feed is police blotter information that comes from the police department, they still need to throw this up there just to be safe. But Carrie, can you speak specifically to counties?
I would just say the same. I mean, you're better off just covering all your bases. If it's an official, county official social media account, then go ahead. It's, going to be touched by the budget in some way, likely that department would be. So go ahead and put the budget out there just as a link, to the web page. It's
And
totally
Carrie,
fine.
are you looking at the questions? Let's handle Tim's right now as well, if you want to look at that.
Okay, let's
So the
see.
question is, Iowa Code 24-2A says copies of the property tax statements that we mail must be maintained on the government entity's website. Our county will be mailing hundreds of different letters based on the different tax districts. Do all of the versions of the letters have to be on the website forever? I've also heard that the letters are not required to be posted on the website, which appears to conflict with the code language.
These letters, as you indicated there, Tim, you would be posting potentially thousands of those statements, right? Code currently requires, as we covered a couple slides ago, that you as an individual levy authority, so a city, county, or school, have to post their notice on their website. So this information is already being posted on that levy authority's website. The posting of the statements, well, the intent, like we get it, but it doesn't add anything new to the property taxpayer. There is no new information there. If they're looking for information in electronic form, and they are getting it hard copy already, obviously, as you all know. And we just don't think this is an option that's doable. This is one of those items for potential sort of adjustment, administrative adjustment that has been identified. So we're not seeking compliance with that particular requirement this year.
And we're also going to have guidance on our website about the notices
Yeah,
that
that's
go
good.
out. We will have an explanation document on our website that will also state, if you didn't get your notice, go to your county auditor's office and they can reproduce your notice.
Right.
That's the core, I think, of what they're trying to get at. Like Carrie said, it's duplicative information to what they're already posting. And I think it's just a way for people to get their notice should they not receive it via mail, which we can elucidate a process for them to do that via our explanation document, which once we have it completed, they're all waiting on me. Once we have it completed, we will send that out to you and we will send out the link to where it will be on our website. Okay. So remember with tax rates, especially cities and schools, this gets a little trickier. Counties for only really one, I think, isn't it 422D tax rate about the only one that you have that's statutorily has
Oh,
to
then
be
election,
approved by an election.
unified
Uh,
law. I mean, yeah,
yeah, unified
there's
law.
not a
That's the one.
lot.
There's not a lot for counties. There's more for cities and schools, but we have to make sure that if you have a tax rate that is subject to an election. So for cities, the big ones here are going to be um, capital projects reserve levy or capital improvement reserve levy and the unified law levy. A lot of cities, especially newer city clerks, will see these on the property tax page of their budget and they will just fill them in thinking, oh, I need money for those things. And then they don't read the literature to say, you've got to have a vote ahead of time. You need to have a referendum in your office that has been passed before they can use these levies. If you get a tax, or if you get a budget in with that tax on it, say the capital improvement reserve levy on it, and you don't have any referendum from that city saying that they passed this, you need to let me know so we can get it removed. And I will work with the city at that point to help them remove it from their budget and resubmit. And that's the way we'll basically handle those. For your schools, this is going to be a lot of PEPL. You have voted PEPL that goes on, so you should have the voted PEPL language in your office, and you will just have less trouble with schools. We'll just put it that way. Most of your trouble is going to come from my folks at cities because of the higher amount of changeover and the lower standards of certification to be a city clerk. Business managers of a school have to be trained and certified. The auditor has to be elected, so there's some bar to entry. Cities have the lowest bar of entry, so you're going to see a problem with this with my cities. So make sure that you're double checking all of the rates on their form, that they don't pass their statutory maximum, which our forms should control. Our forms have built-in error messages and calculations that try to prevent them from going over their certified maximum, but we've got to or their statutory maximum, excuse me. But we got to make sure that our system is working correctly. So just double check, eyeball to make sure that all of the rates you're seeing on the right hand of the property tax page match the limits or lower than the limits on the left hand side, and make sure you have referendums for any voted levy that is being used. So like I said, for cities, we're really just left with unified law and capital improvement reserve levies. All of those other voted levies went away and were wrapped into the consolidated general fund levy that there is this year. Consolidated general fund levy, remember, does not have a specific max that's statewide, right? We used to have regular general levy that 810 was the highest the city could go. That's no more now. Every single city will have their own specified maximum that they can go to, and that will be the one listed on the property tax page. So make sure that when you're checking those, you're checking against the individual max and not the 810. 810 is gone until 2029 when it will come back. But for now, they'll have their own calculated specified maximum that may be higher than 810, maybe lower than 810. Like I was saying, our budget software is designed to air check as much as we can air check, right? It's got its limitations, but for tax rates, it does a pretty good job. But we always want to trust but verify and make sure that we eyeball those when they come in to make sure that they get it through the right process. We have a document that will be coming out along with our. We had a question in the queue earlier about checklists or paper checklists that we had sent out in previous years. Are those coming out? Yes, they are. They will come out with this summary of tax rate limitations, which gives you the limit, the maximum statutory maximums for all of the tax rates for every levy authority. That will be coming out, Carrie, next few weeks, I think, along with certification instructions as well,
Right.
right? Right.
Right. Yeah, we were thinking that we would post or send those out by email after this presentation is over, next week sometime probably. And
Mhm.
then that way we can also include the link to this presentation for anyone that has not was not able to view it.
And then by then we should also have the mailer explanation to include with that as well. So you'll be getting all of that kind of together or close to each other. Debt service levy. This is going to be primarily another issue that is city school related. Remember that the debt service levy, which is a property tax to cover the cost of paying back debt, can only be used for general obligation debts. Okay, so only if they're GOs, and a general obligation debt is a debt that has specifically been passed by the council or board of supervisors or school board that says we will allow repayment of this debt by property tax, and we will set our property tax levy as high as it possibly needs to be to cover this. So your job as the county auditor under 76.2 of the Iowa Code is to take in resolutions. Every local government that passes a general obligation debt is supposed to give you a resolution of that after it's passed. I tell cities and sanitary districts as soon as they pass them, they need to be handing them off to you. Don't wait for budget time. Get them in there right away. But you may have some come in with the budgets themselves. But you need a copy of the resolution. That resolution should have a schedule of taxation built into it. So look through the resolution A to make sure, is it a general obligation? Because you're going to get handed a lot of revenue debts that are not general obligation. So look for the words general obligation, payable from debt service fund, or ad valorem taxation, and that'll tell you it's a general obligation debt. Now they've gotten pretty good about not being crafty lawyers, and instead they just write general obligation in big bold letters at the top, whereas before they used to hide it in the language. Well, that's pretty much a thing of the past. So now it should say right in the title, general obligation. If it doesn't, or you're unsure, let me or Carrie or John know, and we can help you search through those as necessary. But we need to make sure that our debts that are being covered by the debt service levy are only ever general obligation debts. Revenue debts cannot be covered by the general obligation levy. We have a long-term debt schedule that is part of the budget that will give you their payment schedule. And that's what you should be ticking and tying against when you're certifying debt. So when you should bring out their resolutions that they've given you, bring out their long-term debt schedule that they've handed to you, and go through each one of them and make sure that what they are taxing for or what they are showing on their long-term debt, even if they're not taxing for it, if it's a GO, you need to go through and make sure the payment that they're showing on the long-term debt schedule in terms of principal and interest matches or is at least matches, I should say, what they have in their resolution for amount owed for the year. Okay. You're looking at the payments because then you can look at, is it paid from debt service or is it paid from another source? But for all GOs, you should be ticking and tying and making sure that they have in on their long-term debt schedule an amount that is equal to what is on their debt schedule in the resolution that was passed. Again, that is for GOs only. Non-GOs, you do not need to do a check like that. Okay, they're supposed to put non-GOs on their long-term debt schedule too, but you are not required to look those over under 76.2. 76.2 states that the county auditor will raise the tax levy to a necessary level to cover all of the general obligation debts of the city or school or county or sanitary district if the local gov itself has not met that payment amount. So it's a pretty big burden on the county, pretty big responsibility on the county that you have to double check these. So make sure that you are thoroughly double checking them. This year already in the budget process, and it put me in a surly mood, I have found prior non-geo debts that had been levied for 3 or 4 years in certain places where I had to help the new city clerk who came in to say, I don't think this is a general obligation debt by what you've entered on the long-term debt page. And it had been missed for a couple of years. So let's make sure just because the city marks it as GO on their long-term debt page does not mean it is GO. You need resolution backing. So make sure you have that resolution. Okay. Budgets get certified in our online system. They should also be a signed copy should be handed into you when you go to certify, because we want you to check the notice against the written copy against the system copy to make sure that all three are in alignment. Okay. We need all three of them to match, or we need the paper copy and the online copy to be lower than the notice in terms of expenditures or taxes. They can go down, they can't go up. So make sure that you are double checking these documents against each other and not just kind of taking them in, stamping them, and then moving on, right? Because we need to make sure that they are not going over the authority that their citizens have granted them. In order to certify the budget online, and this is another way to get to a checklist, we will, like I said, we'll send you a paper checklist, but inside the certification section of the budget, there is also a checklist. So you go in to your budget dashboard. So sign into our DOM budget system, click on local budgets on the left-hand side, click on budgets, and then it'll bring up your budgets in front of you. And you can select whichever budget you're looking to certify. There will be a blue edit button next to it. You click on that blue edit icon. And then when you get into the system, you'll be able to do your double checking of the budget. The way you can start that is by using that green certify button that'll be kind of top center inside the budget system. So when you click on that green certify button, this checklist will pop up. So for each different budget type, we have a specific checklist of items that you need to clear minimally to make sure that they are compliant with statute. Okay, so we have all of these items laid out. We have been editing our internal checklists in the system. We have been creating new checklists for you this year to use paper copies that you can print off and use on your desktop. So watch for those. Make sure that you're aware that they have changed and you will need to replace previous years for cities, counties, and schools. Everybody else is pretty much okay to use the prior, because a lot of them do not talk about. The only other thing that would have changed for other local governments is the date of submission is now April 30th if they levy a tax. So some of them might have said March 15th. We've changed it to April 30th. Some of them might have said March 31st for submission deadline. We've changed it to April 30th. But that's, for a lot of budgets, that's the only thing that changed. Cities and counties and schools, they have changed substantially. So you'll want to make sure that you double check it. But we have you in the system use that certified checklist and actually put a physical check mark next to each item as you clear it. The nice part about the system is you can do these kind of come and go. There's a save on the checklist itself. So you can check through a couple of items, check them off, and then close the checklist and go back and do the rest. So you can kind of open it, close it, open it, close it, open it, close it as you need to. Once you're done and you've satisfied all of the items on the checklist, you have to go to the bottom where it says certification or certify type, and then you drop it down and there's 3 different options. There's on time, which means they got you a certifiable budget before the deadline of April 30th. There's late with an extension, meaning that it was a city or a county and they got you the budget after the April 30th deadline, but you received a notice of extension from DOM, which if we grant an extension to a city or county, you will be CC'd as the county auditor's office. You will be CC'd on all of that communication between us and them, and you will get your own copy of the signed extension letter that we will provide to the local government as well. So you'll have it there and you'll know when you need to click late with an extension. And again, that's only cities and counties. And then there's late without an extension. So that's anybody else who turns it in late without an extension. Now, for most local governments, whether they turn it in on time or not doesn't really matter to them in terms of tax loss. They don't lose anything. Schools can turn it in on May 15th and they still get the same tax rate that they would have had they had it in on April 15th. So the only ones where there's going to be a giant problem after the fact are counties, cities, and townships. They get penalized by being held to last year's property tax dollars. As Carrie stated before, if you have a late city, county, or township, then they didn't get an extension, mark it as late without an extension in the system, and then let us know so we can help you cut down their tax rate appropriately. There is, once you're done and you've selected your certification type and you hit certify on the bottom of that pop-up box, another pop-up box will come up. This is a pop-up box where you can add any necessary comments that you feel you need to add to the certification process. So a lot of times, county auditors here have helpfully told me when there's a negative balance in one of the funds, you can use it to tell us about the late submission. You can use it to tell us any piece of information that you think is important. Okay, if you think if there's a piece of information that's so important that you don't think you should certify the budget without consulting us, then don't certify it through here and put in a comment. Call us ahead of time before you certify. Okay, this is for more items that are good for us to know after the fact. The budget was certifiable, but it's got these potential deficiencies. That's the kind of thing that you would put in this comment box and click save if you put in a comment. If you do not want to make a comment, so you've certified the budget, you checked all the documents, you don't find anything notable, click no comment and it will take you right through and certify. Quick question, just to clarify, township's deadline is when? April 30th. Any property tax levying local government is now April 30th. I think it's pretty safe to say that. The ones that don't levy taxes, your EMA and your E911 still kept their old deadlines. Everybody else moved to April 30th. I'm fairly certain to say, Carrie and John, correct me if I'm way off. But I believe that's the way that it was handled. So townships, April 30th.
EMA is the only budget that is due February 28th.
Okay, so EMA is the only one who's off. So did
Yeah.
E911 is also April 30th then?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so EMA is the only oddball now. And they don't levy a tax, so it's not really, they don't need as much time to get theirs done, apparently. Once you've certified the budget, once you've gone through all the checklist, you've checked certify, you've put in your comment or skipped the comment box, you will get a notice that says budget certified, and in the online system on the dashboard, it will flip to certified as the budget status. That means you have done your part and you're just waiting on, now you just wait on us to do our part. So this, when you get to certified status, that means you're done with that particular budget. So you can move on to other budgets as you go, as you need to. If you need to, so let's say you get a budget that is not up to snuff and it's got pieces missing, or it's got things that conflict, the notice conflicts with what was submitted, or they've missed the timeline, they've missed one of their publication timelines, they did 9 days instead of 10. If for any reason the budget needs to be turned back to the local authority to redo their work, there's a red reject button right up next to the green certify button that you'll want to use. Don't be afraid to reject a budget. A lot of times in the past, I've had county auditors feel really scared to click the reject button. You're okay to click reject. It won't get rid of any information. It will just set it back into draft status so that the city, county, school, whoever, they can work on their budget again. It doesn't delete it. It doesn't delete any of its information. It just allows you to return it to draft status. So when you click the reject button, and the reason you would do this is, like I said, if something is missing out of those checklist items where they did not meet the checklist item, so you cannot certify the budget and they need to redo something or they need to fix something on their budget, you would click the red reject button. This little pop-up box at the bottom of this slide would come up to ask, why are we rejecting this? All you got to do is put in just put in a little note about why we're rejecting it. So let's say we had a city and they submitted a budget, but their budget adoption hearing notice was published for only 9 days ahead of the hearing date instead of 10. You would come in, you'd hit reject, you would type in there, city budget adoption hearing notice was posted or published for only 9 days rather than 10. Need to redo the hearing, notice and hearing. And then you would click reject. And then you can just give them the direction they need in order to be able to submit a new budget. Obviously, if you're having trouble with any of these or unsure what to do, but something is off, let us know and we'll help you through that. But again, rejection just takes it back to draft status so that they can make changes. It doesn't delete anything and it doesn't delete the budget, and it does not make it so that they cannot resubmit. So don't be too leery about clicking the reject button when you know you need to.
Okay, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about some process things that may come into play, and the first being budget protests. Any local government budget can be protested. And there's a set number of signatures that are required on a petition to protest the budget. When we moved the budget deadline back to April 30th, the budget protest deadline got moved to May 10th. So this provides an opportunity for citizens, if they're unhappy with anything regarding the budget, valid or invalid, there's no, whatever issue they may have with the budget, they can gather enough folks and submit a petition. The number of signatures required is a calculation based on the number of people that voted in that area for the last gubernatorial election. However, for counties, there does need to be at least 100 signatures on that protest. So as a county auditor office, you may see protest documents come in through your office. If you receive one and you are like, what, I don't know what to do with this, contact us. Or if, say, you have a citizen that's like, I'm not sure how I want to protest a budget, who do I need to talk to? Then you can also, in addition, send them to us. We have just some very general information that we can provide them. We also, there's a link on our website that you could send people to that is actually published as part of your budget, regular budget adoption notice for cities and counties. So there's information out there if you get questions regarding how to protest a budget. If you get a budget protest document into your office, you'll need to verify those signatures. And again, give us a call first. So whoever budget type it is, give that applicable DOMer a call and say, hey, I got a protest for a school budget, talk me through this process. You'll verify the signatures locally, make sure that they actually are within the county, for example. And then you'll protest for that protest document to the State Appeal Board. So the State Appeal Board is a 3-member board that is comprised of the Auditor of State, the Treasurer of State, and our director, the Director of Department of Management. When they get that protest document, they will work with staff to have us schedule a local hearing on the protest. So both sides of the argument, the government being protested as well as the citizens leading the protest, can both kind of share their argument to the individuals that from the state. It's usually a representative from each of those 3 departments that make up the State Appeal Board. Come out locally, hear the arguments from both sides. It is sort of a regimented process that happens, and then staff takes all that information back to the State Appeal Board, asks any follow-up questions needed, and renders a decision on the budget. Essentially, the decision is writing. This is in writing, and the State Appeal Board can reduce tax asking and expenditures within the protested budget. If that happens, so if you have a budget, within your county that gets protested and the State Appeal Board renders a decision that changes the budget, we'll work with that county auditor to implement any of the required changes to the budget itself. So before the finalization of tax rates. And if you, again, there's questions about it, send them to our website or have them give us a call, and we can provide any general information about budget protests. So DOM finalization of budgets. We've talked about that. You folks will certify all those local government budgets. We go in into the online system and we finalize those budgets after they're certified. So we do, our own sets of double checks or what have you, and then we finalize the budget. So they change to a status of final. And through that process, a tax statement, a tax certification form is issued. Once that process is complete, we let both the affected budget and the county auditor know that that budget is finalized. So for instance, I will go in, ag extension budgets are usually done pretty early. I will finalize those budgets. I will send an email out to all the county auditors and to the ag extensions and say, hey, this budget type is now finalized by DOM. You can go in there, please pull down the tax certification, look at it, make sure there's no issues. We do have an expectation that these will be reviewed as soon as possible. The window is getting tighter, guys, between everyone moving to April 30th and trying to get all these tax rates done by middle of June. You know, that window is shrinking. So we do, please help us out, review those certifications as soon as you can access them and make sure that they look correct. We need those discrepancies or any questions to be answered right away so we can continue to move forward. When you want to go and pull down that certificate, you'll log back into the system. Like I said, if I told you ag extension budgets are now ready and finalized, you can go in, edit to that individual budget to get inside the budget. And then there's just a one sheet certification form that you can go over and print, and it'll print obviously, excuse me, as a PDF. So if you have, you know, a school or a city that's, you know, just partially in your county, so you're not the control county for that particular entity, in order to access those certifications, instead, you just not log into the budget system. You just do it through the public search. Go over to the budget search option, say, you know, pull up, say this a school that's in your county, but you're not the control county for. Use the budget search to pull up their budget. There is actually a cert button to the left of the budget that is their certification document. So you would select that option, and again, you can print it off, and it's just very simple. You know, all of them are one page. It's just a one-page document that provides you with the summary of their tax rates, rate and dollars. So we do want to make sure both of those are reviewed. So once we do certifications, the next step in the process, once all those certifications are issued, is we certify the final property tax levies by tax district, the consolidated rates list. And again, this is something we'll let you know is ready. You want to double check those rates by tax district, make sure our total rate adds up to what you show as a total for each and every tax district, and notify us again as soon as possible if something does not look right. It is not helpful for us to find out on, you know, June 10th that a rate's been wrong this whole time. That's a situation we don't want to get into. We want to correct those as soon as possible. So when those consolidated rate lists are available on the DOM website, you'll just go to where you pull up your valuation reports and find the consolidated tax rates. You'll see it here. And you can do it as a PDF if you just want to kind of go through and do quick checklists of the different pieces of information, or you can also do it as a spreadsheet if you have your rates in a spreadsheet and you just want to kind of double check it that way. The other thing too, I always mention to folks when you're checking these rates, you know, you're looking at a total consolidated rate, obviously, and sometimes you're like, well, why is this off? I don't know which piece of it is incorrect or not matching. So if you're looking to see the list of the component pieces of that consolidated rate by tax district, what you'd want to do is go to the tax district recap report. Again, under the reports section, valuation reports. You can also do this in a PDF or CSV, so an Excel spreadsheet, and you can pull up, say you have a tax district that's off, you know, a $2, you have no idea why. We show one rate, you show another. What's off? So you can find out exactly what we show for that tax district and what we show for its component pieces in that tax district recap report. In the PDF version, each and every tax district is its own page. So you go to that tax district and you can see the component pieces that we show of that tax rate. In the CSV version, again, it's the same. It's just the different tax rates are shown here, you know, just as the final column. So good, helpful information if you're looking for a discrepancy and trying to figure out what's going on. Now at this point, I want to go ahead and turn it over to John Parker, who works with the school budgets, and he's going to go over in more detail an example of certification.
And I'm going to come in and stop that.
Oh, okay.
And cut in front of John, which he'll be super happy about. Gloria has a question in our queue for you specifically, Carrie, if you want to take a look at it. So do we have the same issue as last year with the DOT requires the SR budget to be done by April 15th, which requires counties to have their second hearing by April 15th?
You're not required to have your second hearing by April 15th. So your deadline is April 30th. I get the sort of the struggle with having that secondary roads budget be due prior to the county budget, but they are really not, I mean, I get that they're related and sort of dependent on each other, but you're not required to hold your second hearing by April 15th. You're required to submit your budget to DOM by April 30th. And then another one, we need to put our public hearing notice for proposed tax levy on our county department's Facebook accounts. Yes. Okay, John, are you ready?
Yes, thanks, Carrie and Ted. So yeah, I'm just kind of walk through the school budget certification. This was just kind of just a way like, here's what you're going to look at specifically for schools. You know, they're going to be pretty similar for, you know, cities and counties and all the other ones. But essentially especially this is cities, counties, and schools now, is you're going to get 2 affidavit of publications now for the first notice and the second hearing. So you'll need to verify that those are indeed filed in your office for both of those publication notices. And then, of course, then that second step or that second check with each of those is you need to make sure that they're, again, published within the 10 to 20 day window, and use those calculators like Ted said on our budget websites for individual budgets or in the system is great. So essentially, you know, the main control on schools, cities, and counties and all this is taxes levied on property. So essentially the first check for schools is to make sure that what they are adopting as their property taxes, you know, their final adoption, is equal to or less than what they published on the proposed tax notice. So you need to make sure that is less than or equal to. And then what you're going to do is, so that's the first check, and then you have to do it again on what they essentially published on the second notice. So again, what they adopted, what they're showing in the adopted page, or what they're going to submit to you as an adopted amount, is equal to or less than what they published on the second notice. So if most of the time schools are probably going to keep them pretty equal, they'll just, you know, go through the process. Everything will be equal. And that, so all those numbers will be the same. But this year is a little bit different with supplemental state aid or SSA. We don't know that number yet, so we may have some movement. But again, school districts still can't go higher unless there's a law change of what they initially propose by March 15th. So then what we're going to do, that's the only revenue line that you need to look at for schools. Then what we need to do is we need to verify some expenditure lines. So the first one is the instruction line. Now these are kind of called out, essentially. It's kind of cut off a little bit, but hopefully it'll show up. They're kind of called out in bold and with an asterisk. So these are the 4 control lines that you want to look at when certifying schools. The first one is instruction. Again, it has to be equal to or less than what was published in the newspaper for the second hearing notice. And then the next one is going to be total support services, line 31A, again, less than or equal to what they published on that second hearing notice. And then the next one is non-instructional programs. And then the next one, I think is the final one, is the total other expenditures. So those are the 4 lines that you need to be looking at for expenditures for school districts and matching those up. And so then what we move into is debt service. So debt service, it's a little bit different in schools in the fact that actually schools can't levy taxes unless it's voted on by the voters. And it needs to be approved by 60%. So this just can't be the voted GO bonds. You know, typically it has a vote. So you'll know that a vote happened So this needs to be approved by 60% of the voters. And essentially, my debt service schedule is separated into 4 parts. One is that voted GO bonds, so that's 60% approval. And then what districts can do is they can do a surplus levy, kind of Carrie mentioned earlier, so they can levy against that general obligation debt in advance to pay off that debt sooner. But they will need to file a resolution within your office for that surplus levy. And I'll go through that. Then there are 2 other sections that you really aren't responsible for checking. You may get paperwork in your office, but those are voted, those are voted PEPL and the revenue bonds. You don't really need to check those 2 within your office. I really want you to focus on the voted GO bonds and the surplus levy. So essentially, you can go to the next one, Carrie. So here's what that actually looks like within the system. It's that voted GO debt and that advanced surplus debt. And so what you're going to look at is you're going to look at, so here's an example that I got from a school district that says you're going to match up that amount to the fiscal year that it's due. So you can see this essentially is saying, okay, actually, let's go to the next slide, Carrie, if you don't mind. So what this essentially says is within the resolution that's filed in the office, they say, okay, the total amount that we need to pay off in principal and interest for fiscal year 2025, we can see over on the right-hand side, fiscal year 2025 is $291,200. So that is indeed what the district is going to levy or is shown on their long-term debt schedule as the amount that they are going to collect for this fiscal year. And so then that is, of course, split up between principal and interest payments. This one's a little bit trickier. I had to kind of dig in there to see, what's the principal and interest amount? So essentially, they list out the principal amount separately. They don't really list the interest amount within this resolution. Some will say principal is this amount, interest is this amount, and then it's kind of easy per fiscal year. But that is that's kind of how this one's set up. So you're just verifying essentially all of those numbers. And if these numbers don't jive with what you have within that resolution, a district would need to file an updated resolution with you, or they need to change these numbers within their long-term debt schedule to make sure that these numbers do indeed match what's on file within your office. And then the next one is that advanced surplus levy. So again, they're levying extra in order to either defease that debt sooner, save a little bit of interest. A lot of districts, we allow them to do this because it saves the property taxpayers money in the long run on interest payments. So here's an example. They need to file, they'll work with their attorneys to essentially craft a resolution. And that resolution will specify how much they want to levy in surplus or in extra for the fiscal year. So again, you're just matching up this number. It's not going to have a principal and interest, it's not going to have an original or interest amount. It's usually mostly just going to be an extra. So you'll just match up that total within the resolution to what's in the system. And then what you're going to check is the voted PEPL or voted physical plant equipment. So this is essentially an election of, most districts have $1.34, some have 67 cents. So you're just essentially verifying that indeed, if they are using it, that they're not going over their levy rate limit. This is an example where they're at $1.34. You may see some districts, they can fund some of this with a surtax component. So even though they may have $1.34, some of it could be coming from an income surtax. Essentially what that is doing is replacing property taxes with a surtax. And so their levy rate essentially would be less, but it'll be less than what their maximum amount is. And so essentially then what you're going to get is you're going to get that signed budget and certification. So this is the page from the school district. This is what they're actually signing to say, hey, this is what we adopted for the fiscal year. And then you'll want to check that date. So what I actually submitted as my signature to the county auditor, that date, that 4/29 date actually matches what's in the online system. So just to make sure that those 2 dates essentially match up. And then I kind of will say, as we were talking about certification and consolidated rates, schools are in a very unique situation in the fact that we don't know exactly what supplemental state aid amount is going to be this year because this just hasn't been decided. And that'll essentially impact property taxes. And the formula generates, the school aid formula essentially is the control and generates the property tax, usually basis for school districts. And that's still an estimate at this point. And so we're going to have fluctuations between when a school district adopts their budget and actually what DOM or what I certify back to the county auditor. That rate is going to be updated based on final calculations. So that rate isn't necessarily going to match what the school district actually adopted because of the formula. And that's fine. It can actually go up because it's all formula adjustments. It's nothing the school district did. The school district was in compliance and you're able to certify them. But just kind of keep that in mind as you get rates back from us. They're not going to match what the actual school district adopted because of the school finance formula. And so, but you need to be using the final rates that I'm sending to you. Don't use what the actual school district adopted because, again, they're still estimates, and they're estimates up to the point of April 30th. And any law changes or anything like that need to be taken into an account. So that's why schools are a little bit unique and how final amounts are going to be different than adopted amounts. So this is our last slide. You can see who's responsible for each budget. You feel free to email or call any one of us if you have any problems during certification. Emergency management agencies or EMA budgets, they should be into your office for the most part. Get those certified so we can address any issues. And before we really get busy with other districts, that's a good policy to kind of look at. And 911 service boards, again, they're not levying a tax. I kind of told them, feel free to get this done early. You don't need to wait till the 30th. So if you're getting those into your office as well, maybe get those certified here in the next week or so. I won't bother you probably till the end of the month if those aren't getting certified. So appreciate that. And I don't know if Ted and Carrie have anything else to add.
I think we've cleared out the queue of questions. Well, it looked like one just popped in, but yeah, will the presentation be available to download? Yeah, I mean, ISAC will post it like they have in the past with presentations. So they'll post it to their website. So it can be viewed at a later time if needed. And we will send out the like paper instructions like we talked about, that summary of tax rates. We'll send all those out to folks. So you will have those probably next week. We'll send it out via email. We'll include the link to this presentation. So if you have someone in your office that wasn't able to view it and would like to, then you can certainly point them in that direction. And we're always available for questions. Kind of like what we've been saying the whole time. It's best to sort of deal with things sooner rather than later. If you get really late into the year and we're trying to change tax rates, it gets pretty hard to make those late changes. Changes impact lots of different things, like tax rates. Consolidated tax rates are used for other things too. So they're used for the calculation, the spread of the tax liability process for utility replacement tax. So they're used for other things. We need them to be correct, and any discrepancies to be figured out quickly. So one of the questions was, we only have 3 schools ready for the mailer. Is DOM sending out a push to those entities? Yeah, we're gonna definitely follow up with folks next week, and do those reminders that this needs to be done. If you're not in the system on March 15th, you're not going to be in the mailer. That's sort of the big picture. So
Yeah, I've been keeping school districts are really, a lot of them I know have meetings next week, so they're waiting probably for that. And they're still nervous about school aid. It's not going to be decided next week, but they'll all get in, hopefully. So I wouldn't worry about that. But But emergency management deadline, it did not get pushed until April 30th. It is emergency management is the only one that is still February 28th or before April 30th.
All right. Any other questions? Well, again, let us know if you have any questions. We'll be communicating to folks regarding just sort of to switch topics quick. Because of the audience we have, we will be communicating to folks regarding the mailing, just sort of reminders. I have screenshots of, you know, how you go into our system and download that data file. We know that some folks are working with their software to, you know, run tests of that information, that sort of thing. So we'll be putting, doing a push out to, you know, those cities and schools, counties. I shouldn't have to do that for you guys, right? Just to make sure, remind people, got to be in the system by March 15th, or you're not in the mailer. You know, keeping that in mind, and just sort of, you know, the reminder about that. And we will be posting, like I think Ted had mentioned, the sort of the example of the mailer with sort of an explanation beside it to try to you know, educate folks on what they're looking at a little bit. That's linked from the mailer itself. It's a page on our website, so folks can go there and get a little bit of background on what the intent of that mailing statement it is and what that information is about. So
Also following up on that point, on either tomorrow or Monday, I will send an updated list of all of the local governments who have failed to propose their property tax hearing notice in their budget forms for statewide, like I did last week. So just be on the lookout for that. And also the we're still working on a couple of pieces of the download, the download file that you're going to download to go to your mailers. So don't download that just yet. It should be hopefully corrected early next week, and you'll have that available for you to look at. Again, we'd strongly advise you don't pull that until March 15th. We are going to send out communications early next week, basically telling all of the local govs they need to have all their stuff in the system by 4 p.m. on March 15th. And that's what the cutoff is going to be.
and the again, those instructions on how to collect the file, I'll send that out next week. It's pretty straightforward, folks. Hopefully it's just you go to a spot, download a file, it's in your downloads. You don't need to do anything with that file other than upload it into your system. Again, people doing test runs, just be really careful with that. I think the only concern we'd have is if you pull it down now, you know, you could end up with the wrong version. You know, just be real cognizant of that. The files just kind of look the same. The naming convention is always going to be the same. So, you know, if you're doing any sort of testing, just be real cautious, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're sending out the wrong information or something that was missing that people weren't actually missing from the data. So I think that question was asked a couple times. Okay. All right. Okay, well, I think that we've covered what we needed to cover today, everyone. So just again, please let us know if you have any questions as you're working on certification. We're happy to help you out however we can. It's always best to start with the individual that's responsible for that particular budget, because they're the most aware of the nuances of that budget. You know, don't send an email to all three of us about an ag extension budget. That just kind of you know, would waste Ted and John's time, that sort of thing. So kind of try to keep it focused on whose budget it is, so that way they can more quickly answer your question. And let's all be hoping for smooth sailing this year. Katie, are you on? Is there anything else you need us to indicate in closing?
Nope, I can end whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, just let us know by phone or email if you guys have any other questions. And again, thanks so much for letting you take a few moments of your day today.